Hello and welcome back. I am sorry that it took me 3 weeks to post the second part, but because I was procrastinating, my monitor broke and I got coronavirus. I couldn't post. But anyways, let's get on with the video. So with trench warfare on the French side, there was a stalemate. So this war was not about expansion. At this point, the Germans and the Austrians were kind of in a bad position. The Allies had a lot of overseas colonies, so you know that getting men was no problem. And plus, the UK started a naval blockade. Another thing that we need to talk about is about the Allies making new France, like Italy and Japan. Since Japan was trying to build itself an empire, they took all of Germany's islands in the Pacific. Like Italy is Italy. At first, they were on the German side, but after Austria broke their heart, as I like to call it, and the Allies promised that they will be getting land, they joined the Allies. So the Central Powers made New France, and their name was the Ottomans. And their country was divided whether they wanted to go to war or not. They had got their butt kicked in the First Balkan War, which I might make a video about in the near future. So the guys in the country that wanted the war went off on their own and took a few pot shots at the Russian ports, and they did that on purpose so they can go to war. And since the Ottomans joined the war, it was concerning to the British that they joined the war because the Middle East, like today, has a crap ton of oil, and like modern day America, they wanted all of that oil. Anyways, the Ottomans attacked Russia in the Caucasus, but since they were not ready for the cold, they failed. So then after a big defeat, they crossed the desert to take the Suez Canal from the British, and guess what? That also failed. So then the Allies tried to invade through Gallipoli, and guess what? They also failed. And it was a mess and a waste of men. Freddie would not approve. And something that happened at the same time was that the Ottomans blamed all of their losses on the ethnic Armenians that lived in their country. And the result was a genocide that had 500,000 Armenians dead. Then the Germans sent off a spy in Afghanistan to convince the local tribes to rise up and attack British Raj in India. And that also failed because they got drunk, and that is a big no-no in Afghanistan. So like all the fronts did nothing to stop the stalemate, they were looking at other things that they could do. Before the war, everybody had a conference to put rules in this great war. Then Germany looked at the rules and said no to every rule, and probably also wiped their hands with it. So then Zeppelin air raids were starting over British cities. And if you're wondering why didn't they just shoot down the Zeppelins? They're basically just massive balloons. It's because Zeppelins could reach massive heights that British artillery or British anti-air raid cannot reach it. And also at the time, they started using chlorine gas in battle. Something else that the Germans still did not learn yet is that do not mess with the Americans. So guess what they did? They sunk a civilian ship, the Lusitania, which had 159 Americans in it. And since the Germans were being an a-hole, they went out of their way to also use gas attacks in battle. Meanwhile, the advance into Serbia was not going well, so then they wanted some help. So then they turned to Bulgaria and told them that their wildest dreams would come true if they joined them. And since Bulgaria lost territory in the Second Balkan War, they went in with them. So then together they knock out Serbia. So then they retreat to Albania. And Albania was neutral but had some ties to Austria. And so then they entered in a friendly invasion. After that, Portugal got real friendly with the British, just like always. So then the Germans declared war. Then they fought the only naval battle of the war. The both sides had a type of new boat called dreadnoughts, but they cost a lot of money to make. Both sides did not want to use any of them just because they ran the risk of losing a bunch of money. And some got destroyed or sunk, and they just kept them in port just in case if a battle was called. The Battle of Jutland. After that, a bunch of them just got damaged, and then they never tried that again. At the time, also the British started conscripting a bunch of men, so then they just had a crap ton of men and also a lot of reserves. Then the Germans launched an attack in Verdun that left a bunch of men dead. So then the French were like to Britain if they could do something to divert the German attack. So then they did. So then the Battle of Somme Samoa also came. Lost of life was 60,000 British bravs dying, and at the time introducing you the new technology that the British called tanks. So after all of this, how is our good friend the Russians doing? And they got pushed back. Then they did an offensive, the Brusilov offensive, but they had to stop due to supply shortage. And the Romanians, seeing how well the Russians were doing, they started attacking, and they got destroyed. At the time, Greeks like the Ottomans, were fighting with each other. The king liked the Central Powers, but the prime minister wanted to join the Allies. So then, in a short summary, the prime minister won, and then they made a new front. And with help of the Allies, the Russians were pushing the Ottomans in the north, and the British in Mesopotamia. So then a new offensive was launched in the south. The offensive was aided with famous officers, and some of you know him as Lawrence of Arabia. After a while, the war was bad for everybody. But now who's going to crack first? And it was Russia. And like they were starving, and a crazy homeless man was in charge of the country while the Tsar was away. After all, there was a revolution. Then a new government was placed of the Tsar, and they also got overthrown by the Bolsheviks. So the Tsar got overthrown by government, and then that government got overthrown by the Bolsheviks, and they pulled Russia out of the war. This is great news for Germany now that they only had one front to focus on. Something that they are noticing is that the United States was sending aid to the Allies. So then they sent a telegraph to Mexico, and if they could attack the United States, then they could annex Arizona, New Mexico. But they said no because they were fighting a civil war, and plus they were not suicidal. They said that fighting a war with the U.S. is easy, but winning it would be hard. Then the British got a hold of it and showed the United States. And that was the last straw for the United States. Then they joined the war. So then, as a last-ditch effort, they threw men at the enemy. Weak, but. So when they started throwing men at the Allies, like they were just sending wave after wave after wave. That just kept on making them weaker and the Allies stronger. So after getting pushed back on all fronts, they gave up, and the war was over. The Germans were the last ones to give up, and the 11th of November 1918, on the 11th o'clock, Germany gave up. And at the Treaty of Versailles, they lost a bunch of crap. Well, then that'd be all. Goodbye!